time for the Severe MMA Preview Show with Sean Sheehan, Spencer Kite, Harry Powell, and your host, Ian O'Neill.
That's right. We're back. We're back for the UFC Vegas 65. UFC Vegas 65. This Saturday night, Derek Lewis versus Sergey Spivak in the main event. Spencer likes to call it the hangover card, and I'm going to definitely call this preview show the hangover preview show because I am fucked after my couple of days away in Boston. I nearly killed myself down there. I had a hell of a time. I'm back. I'm unprepared, but we're going to bring it to you anyway. I'm glad to be joined, as always, by my two favorite gentlemen, Mr. Harry Powell, Mr. Spencer Kite, and we're going to break down this card for you over the next hour or so. Lads, how are you keeping today? I go away for a couple of days trip. Fucking card of the year in the UFC. Cristiano Ronaldo throws the toys out of the pram. I'm like, good God, I'm not going to be able to go off on a trip ever again, but look, we're back in action. We're gonna wind up the year for the rest of the year. A couple of events left. I'm looking forward to it. And I'm also looking forward to the little break that's going to come in between as well, in between December. But we're not going to be taking a break from now until the end of the year, or at least until December 17th, until the last UFC card. And this kind of kicks off the last month or so of UFC action. As I said, Derek Lewis, Sergey Spivak, Ion Cutelaba versus Kennedy Nzechukwu. I'm going to butcher that name 5 or 6 times. I'm sick and hungover. I tried it 5 times before I came on, but I'm just going to call him Kennedy in the co-main event. Oh my God, I just seen Chase Sherman was there too. We'll get to it. Lads, this is going to be a raw one today.
This is going to be the preview show unplugged, right? This is
absolutely. Okay, where was I? I'm glad to be joined by you guys as always. I hope you're keeping well. I hope you enjoyed UFC 281. It was a great event. It's hard to follow up an event like that. The fight night cards have been less than satisfactory, and sometimes this year this fight does have a couple of interesting fights sprinkled throughout, and a couple of decent fights that I'm excited, and storylines that I'm excited to talk about as well. And we'll get off in the main event. Derek Lewis, Sergey Spivak. For me, coming into this one, I'm very curious to see what Derek Lewis we get in here, because I think a common kind of a theme throughout Derek Lewis's career for me was that mental approach to this game for him. And I'm wondering where he is mentally now. He's been there. He's challenged for titles. He's coming off the back of 2 losses, not really wanting to come in here and take another loss, but, he's going to have to be on his game against a guy like Sergey Spivak. It's a really interesting clash of styles. For me, it's what Derek Lewis turns up, Harry. Is that what you're kind of thinking on Saturday night? Because if he comes in and we've seen an informed Derek Lewis, and he can take out almost anyone with the power that he has, but it's kind of sometimes the trend in his fights is going well until it's not going well, and then he kind of looks for a way out. And, we kind of had a brief conversation about this on the group earlier on, and just wondering what your general consensus is about this fight overall.
Yeah, I mean, Derek Lewis has always been a bit of a duality, hasn't he, right? Like, he either fights are going horrendously bad until they're going brilliantly, or fights are going really brilliantly until they're going horrendously bad. Like, it seems as though consistency is something that's been sort of the arch nemesis of Derek Lewis, both in terms of his commitment to training and also his performances in fights. And look, he's a man that has come in and sort of made being entertaining cool before it was cool, right? Like, at least at the heavyweight divisions, and he did it with a new style. I think he learned very early on that he wasn't interested in being the most skilled fighter. He wasn't interested in being, looking like Francis Ngannou, but he was interested in getting in headlines because of a fire IG page. And we all know what that does in modern MMA media and modern MMA media coverage is a lot of the time it'll be what's Derek Lewis's best Instagram story this week or some garbage like that, right? If I'm Derek Lewis, I don't know what I'm still doing this for. I'm not going to win a title. The likelihood of me beating Francis Ngannou is very slim. The chance of me beating Cyril Gagné for the second time of fighting him is very slim. Does he beat a Tom Aspinall? Probably not. Does he beat a Pavlovich? Probably not. Does he beat a Sergey Spivak? I think to your point, if he turns up and he's in form and he is aware of the range and he forces Spivak to really think about those takedown attempts and those clinch exchanges, of course he can absolutely beat him. He has all of the tools and he has the monster power. We know this. But the question for me is exactly the same way that you just asked it. Who is Derek Lewis now? What's he doing this for? I don't know.
You know, Spencer, at 37, normally, and I'm a guy who looks at ages to kind of get, certain stages of fighters' careers, if they're getting a little bit like 37 isn't that old for a heavyweight, really, to be honest. So, if there's a rededication here from Derek Lewis, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that he can put a run together again in the heavyweight division. He's proven that he can make it to the top already. He has won some stylistic matchups. He's lost some good stylistic matchups for him too. This is a relatively tricky stylistic matchup for him, I think, in Sergey Spivak, because the likelihood is that he's going to have to be defending takedowns quite a bit. Just maybe before you kind of go into maybe the matchup or anything like that, just maybe your thoughts on Derek Lewis as well. Is it kind of the same kind of thoughts me and Harry as you're wondering what kind of Lewis is going to show up on Saturday night? And I know that you had the opportunity to talk to him and kind of ask him that earlier on today.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly the same thoughts and ideas that you guys have. It's the same thoughts and ideas that everybody has. And as you said, I spoke to him today on Wednesday ahead of his media availabilities and said that to him. Like, I've talked to Derek Lewis. I've known Derek Lewis now for a long, long time. We've spoken before the majority of his fights in the UFC. And so I feel like I have a bit of that rapport with him. And he mentioned, like, I see everybody looking at me with one eye, like, I don't know what this fella's about anymore. And I was like, well, look, man, I'm asking too, because I don't know what you're doing. Like, I don't know where you're at. Like, are you still capable of doing this? Are you still going out there? Is it going out there to beat this dude? Is it going out there to cash them checks? Like, and if it is, no bother, like, no problem, get that money. But like, where are you at here? And he, for the first time in a long, long time, was really pretty genuine as Derek Lewis can be, because he, can't be fully, completely serious at any time. Said, like, look, I miss that feeling of winning. It's been almost a year since I won a fight. And that last one against Sergey Pavlovich left a sour taste in his mouth, because it was under a minute. He didn't think it should have been stopped the way it was. I think we all felt that same way in watching it happen. And so it's going to be really interesting, right? The tricky part with Derek Lewis is that we've heard all of the I'm motivated, I'm focused, and now he has made changes in this camp. He's no longer working with Crew Rob Perez. Joe Murphy is running his camp, is doing all of his training, is basically in charge of the system, and he sounds upbeat about it. He sounds like he's genuinely made some adjustments, but he's sounded upbeat and sounded like he's made some adjustments before. And then we come out and it's literally the same thing from start to finish. We get Fat Pat on the way out. We get Derek in there doing this one. And then he either knocks somebody out or he looks kind of lost and looks for an exit. This is a fight where traditionally he should have success. He's beaten this caliber of guy repeatedly throughout his career, because I don't think as of yet Sergey Spivak is in that championship caliber of people that have beaten him. But like, if you're not in this, if you're not focused, if you really haven't made changes and concerted efforts to be dialed in on Saturday night, this big polar bear dude is going to just take you down and do what he did to Augusto Sakai. And like, we've seen Derek get taken down and get held on the ground for long periods of time. And yeah, it's entertaining when he does the like muscle his way back up and just bench press people off of him and zero mechanic, zero technique get up. But like, can you keep doing that at 37, coming up on 38, and a 27-year-old guy that's on the upswing and continuing to get better, looking to keep you on the canvas? Like, I have the same questions as everybody. He's said the right things. Now he needs to go out and show that that's true.
Indeed. And Harry, I'll go back to you and we'll talk about Sergey Spivak for a bit. It's a huge opportunity for Sergey here. Obviously faltered against Tom Aspinall. Hey, that can happen. No problems whatsoever. But generally speaking, he's been on a good run. Only one loss in his last 5 fights. Picked up good wins against Greg Hardy and Augusto Sakai. This is a little bit of, even though what we have talked about Derek Lewis, it still is a step up in competition. He is going to have to prepare for this fight like he's facing the best Derek Lewis. And it's a chance for him to really kind of make himself really well known in the heavyweight division and not put himself generally into title contention, but at least maybe into the conversation of a guy who's coming up and maybe a challenger in maybe another year or two with another couple of wins. But first of all, he's got to get past Derek Lewis. Do you think he has the ability to do that? And how can you see him trying to do that? I think the answer is pretty obvious.
Without a shadow of a doubt, he can do it, right? I think if I'm Sergey Spivak's coaches, right, what I say in this camp is, all right, let's just not do anything fucking stupid and we'll beat the brakes off this dude, right? And what I mean by doing anything stupid is hanging around in the pocket for too long, darting into space with no setups, naked low kicks, admiring your work after you've thrown your shots. If I'm Sergey Spivak, I am keeping him to the body 1,000,000 times, as many as I can, because Derek's not going to catch him. He's not going to try and run you down to the cage with him. He's not even going to try and counter you with them. He'll just eat them like he does a Popeyes and expect to just keep on trucking. If I'm Sergey Spivak, I think the other thing that I really need to be careful of is where I put my head when I shoot for takedowns, right? And that solely is because Derek Lewis has a bowling ball uppercut, and if he catches you with it, you are going to go to sleep. And these things have happened to many a man in the parking lot and in the octagon, right? So if I'm Sergey Spivak, I think the way I'm entering is I'm entering head outside, or I'm going to force Derek to cut an angle as I'm readying myself to throw a shot. Now that means that Spivak is going to have to use superior footwork in here. And I say superior footwork for a man that just plods along the floor towards you and doesn't do any footwork whatsoever. But we haven't seen superior footwork against a guy with the power of Derek Lewis before and work successfully for Sergey Spivak. So I think that, to me, is the thing that I'm looking for. I know that he can grapple. I know that when he gets down, he has good ground and pound. He has submission options. The question to me is, how does he get there? And how does he get there successfully without taking unnecessary damage? Because the allure of Derek Lewis is that he just needs one. And if I'm Sergey Spivak, that's the thing that I'm trying to negate, is that he just needs one. And if I could just throw out a question to you guys, are we looking at a matchup here that the UFC have made knowing that Derek Lewis isn't marketable as he once was, isn't going to win fights to put himself in title contention, and is on a bit of a fat wage, and this is here's your third strike, see you later?
Yeah, Spencer, I'd be happy for you to take that if you want.
It's entirely possible. I mean, I don't think we can ever say for sure, but it sure does look comparable to that, right? We talk about it all the time on every show that we do across this platform. The UFC at various times will do the professional wrestling thing. The guy that's leaving the territory, the guy that's on the upswing, do the job, put the guy over, away you go. Now, this is mixed martial arts, and so it's not as easy as telling the guy that's leaving that you got to let the kid pin you. It's got to be clean in the center of the ring. Doesn't work that way. Derek Lewis can go out, and do to Sergey Spivak what he did to Curtis Blades not all that long ago, where Blades shot naked and Derek just threw that ham hock and Blades, and like, just great. If you ever want to see somebody just freeze and fall in a cage, go watch that. But it sure does look like all right, this is how we move you out of the main event picture. This is how we move you a little bit further down the ladder, because I think like it's been long enough now that Derek has been in this position and smashed up against that ceiling where we know this is about what it is. He can beat these guys. He can fight these guys. They can be main event fights. But are there diminishing returns of doing this with Derek Lewis over and over again, to where either fans are less interested or opponents are less interested because beating Derek Lewis stops carrying the same weight that it did even 2 fights ago?
Yeah, and that's the curious thing for me. I think like we will have a definitive answer to those questions after this fight, and maybe I see UFC cutting Derek Lewis after losing 3 in a row? Probably not. I think he's got too much of a name. He's got too much of a highlight reel, and he's a good character that can sell a fight as well. So I can't see them really cutting too much ties with him after the fact. But where is he at with his contract? I mean, you try to renegotiate a contract off the back of 3 losses in a row, or 4 losses in a row, or 1 win in your last 4. The UFC can kind of manipulate someone's contract by that. I feel they can anyway, without knowing all too much about it. But I'd imagine it's much tougher to negotiate a nice contract for yourselves off 3 losses than it is off 3 wins. For me, yeah, I solely see this opportunity, like Harry said, this is the UFC putting Sergey Spivak in a spot in a main event where he can get a win over Derek Lewis, and he can kind of become this new wave of heavyweight fighter and kind of freshen up the top of the heavyweight division. Should we be considering, Spencer, there's a question, Sergey Spivak as the new wave of a heavyweight fighter if he does pull off the win here? I know we got animated the last time talking about Sergey Spivak, to say the least.
Where you at, Sean Sheehan?
yeah. And Sean reckoned, he probably wasn't going to go anywhere, and he's right to think that. I felt that was a bit premature, considering Sergey is only 27 years of age, has plenty of time to grow. And, this is the perfect fight for him at the perfect time, I think, to kind of fucking figure out all of that stuff out. So for me, that's why I'm kind of peculiar to see how this fight goes. And, I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out. Obviously, if I was to guess the way it was going to play out, I'd imagine Sergey Spivak is going to have to try and close the distance safely. He's going to try and get Derek Lewis and on his back, and he's going to have to try and put Derek Lewis in a position where he's like, and where we've seen before, where he's just like, fuck it, I'm not going to win. And he kind of just switches off and fights. And I know, like when you know that you can do that to a fighter, that would give Sergey Spivak some confidence to go in there and try and do that. He doesn't have to go and wrestle for 5 rounds. He can just tire him out. But we ask Volkov how that went. You do not play it safe at all with Derek Lewis at any stage, because you could get knocked out in the first minute of the first round or the last minute of the last round with him, and it'll be curious. So are we all thinking it's going to be a Spivak win here, guys? Do we think that Lewis might be able to pull it off? How I mean, you could probably know best from speaking to the both of them. Like, what did you feel, Spencer, when you were talking to Derek Lewis?
I mean, so this will be a little bit of a precursor to what's coming on the picks and predictions, picks and plays later this week. But Derek Lewis at plus money against Sergey Spivak is a very appetizing proposition, because we've seen this guy knock out better competition, better fighters, as my dog barks in the background.
Biggie's getting all worked up over Derek Lewis. I gotta love it.
Biggie making an appearance in the background. And so, I mean, I think we all agree that the possibility and the option for Derek Lewis is there, right? He can certainly win this fight. The more likely outcome, probably Sergey Spivak doing very similar to what he did to Augusto Sakai, being patient, being smart in the first round, figuring out a way in, and then just putting him on the canvas as often as he needs to in order to tire him out.
Indeed. Harry, I'm sure you're the same. Like, we can kind of agreed it's like you get Derek down on the canvas, you make him work down there, and you either tire him out or you make him quit. I think if you're a coach of Sergey Spivak, that's what you've got to be looking at, and that's the advice you've got to be giving your fighter there as well going into this fight.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And, we always say that the most well-rounded fighter is the fighter that you should probably put your chips behind, unless there is an overarching X factor.
Unless you're Alex Bahia.
I mean, even then, like, the skills aren't so different, and the overarching X factor was the power, right? Like, I know, whatever, for the memes and whatever. And Derek Lewis's power is that X factor, but I think because the skill differential is so vast with Sergey Spivak, and we've seen the weaknesses and the holes in Derek Lewis's game before, it seems silly to obviously not rule Derek Lewis out at all, but the probability of who's going to win the fight is likely to be Sergey Spivak.
Indeed. And we shall move on to the co-main event. And that is a light heavyweight fight between Ion Cutelaba and Kennedy Nzechukwu. I think that Harry is not wanted. Yeah, dude, we'll have to spend a little bit on this or we're not going to fill up the hour. Anyway, but
hey, you enjoyed Kennedy and Nzechukwu's last performance.
No, and that's what I was going to say. That's what was going to be like. Look at Kennedy started off not so good against Paul Craig, losing to Paul Craig via triangle. All right, it happens. It happens to loads of other people. Picked up good wins over Stoicic, Ulberg, which is a good win right now, if you ask me, and Marquez before losing 2 in a row. But I do feel it was that kind of spell coming back in the Carl Robinson fight. He looked great. And I think losing those 2 fights in a row really kind of maybe lit the fire under him. And he needed to do so because he had no other choice in the matter. I think, coming in here against Ion Cutelaba, it's just a good stylistic match. He's going in against a mad bastard, and he can pick up another knockout here. Now, do I think he's going to make waves in that 205-pound division? Not really, but he put on a decent display against Robson the last time. And, he's in here against a winnable Ion Cutelaba. Harry does not agree whatsoever.
So I do think he looked good against Carl Robinson. However, not only did Carl Robinson have a horrendous game plan, it also looked like, and was Carl Robinson a short notice replacement? Was he?
Could have been. I'll check that out.
Thank you. Because what I remember from the fight is just the overarching and overwhelming nature that Carl Robinson looked like he was 10 years younger and in the same family as Kennedy, and he was fighting his older brother and just getting ragdolled about the place.
Not a short notice replacement.
Right. Okay, fine. Then just horrendous. Like, you can only beat who's in front of you, and I take nothing away from Kennedy and Nzechukwu. Fuck's sake.
And Nzechukwu.
Nzechukwu, thank you. I'd nailed it earlier in when I was eating dinner. I was practicing it, and you fucked me up.
My mispronunciations is contagious.
Right, but like losses to Negumereanu, a split decision loss. Yes, it was a close fight. Whatever. We saw what Carlos Ulberg was doing. I feel as though this is a nice matchup, but it could also be a horrendous matchup for him at the same time. That mad bastardry we've seen before be the undoing of Nzechukwu, right? I don't know. I know that he has the things in his personal life, and sometimes that inhibits his training and everything else. But I just don't get who he is as a fighter yet. He's very long. He's very rangy. He can do a bit of the grappling. He's got power, but he just seems to make the wrong decisions or tries to employ the wrong tools at the right times. You know what I mean? And against Ion Cutelaba, who is a mad bastard, if Kennedy tries to fight long when Ion Cutelaba's like, I throw plates at man and man fall over, then we could be seeing Kennedy staring up at the lights and Ion Cutelaba doing, big, mad, runny things. I guess the other side of this is Ion Cutelaba is running a 2-fight losing streak and a third fight losing, a third notch to that losing streak. I see no reason. And I mean, I know I said this about Derek Lewis, but I see no reason to keep Cutelaba in the division. I don't think he's that good at selling a fight. I don't think he's that good of a name. And other than being a mad bastard, right? Like I don't see what he brings. So it feels a little bit like the main event here, but in a co-main event.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. That's actually what I was thinking. It's definitely like the co-main event where, you know, I feel if Kennedy tries to stand and bang with Cutelaba, he could be signing his debt warrant here. So I think if he fights smart, he'd probably get the win here. And I think for Ian Cutelaba, it's a big fight because, as you said, he needs to get that win. For Kennedy, it's more so. I kind of agree with you. I'm not sure if he knows what kind of a fighter he is yet, but now he's coming into the period of his career, Spencer, where he really has to prove it and show us and show himself what type of a fighter he is. And, you know, he's going in against Cutelaba, who has had experience there with good level guys. And if you're to notch a win against a guy like Cutelaba, I mean, that's going to give you all the confidence in the world, isn't it?
It certainly will. I mean, you guys are bang on that. Prior to probably the last fight, Kennedy had no clue who he was as a fighter, what the proper way to do everything was, right? Like he's a 30-year-old man that is 13 fights into his career. He's got all of the raw tools, but his time on the Contender Series, it was raw tools. Like he was green as can be. Green is that lovely jersey you have on, Ian. And so it's been a process. It's been a figure it out. And it's going to sound like a lazy comparison because they're teammates, but he really does feel to me like the junior version of his big brother, Ryan Spann, who went out and smacked Ion Cutelaba earlier this year and went out last week and smacked Dominic Reyes and has had these same things of like not knowing how to fight properly, not making the right decisions. Told us after the fight against Dominic Reyes, not training properly or barely training at all, which certainly wouldn't surprise me given the distance he lives from where Fortis is and things like that. And then we've seen him commit to it and have these good performances. I spoke to Kennedy today as well. And he said, look, like this has just been these first bunch of fights have all just been get me experience, get me in there so that I can start picking up and understanding this stuff that Safe screams at us all the time and drills into us all the time about seeing things and appreciating things and making the right decisions and being locked in. I think we saw the start of that with Carl Roberson, and now this fight is the chance to continue that. Completely possible that doesn't happen, right? He's still relatively young in his career. As we've all said, Cutelaba is an absolute lunatic who's going to march across the cage as he's getting introduced and get right in his face and then do the exact same thing 4 seconds later when whoever's refereeing this fight says, all right, fight. It could go sideways, but he also feels like a kid that if he does truly ever lock in and truly ever figure some of this stuff out, is 6'5" with an 83-inch reach, an absolute granite chin, and legitimate concussive power in both hands. Like, I know I always sound like the guy that's drinking the Fortis MMA Kool-Aid because I'm on here reciting things that Safe and I have talked about many times over. But like when you look at those raw materials, that's the makings of a very dangerous fighter. May not get there, but I'm certainly going to give him the benefit of the doubt and a long leash to prove to me that he's not going to get there.
100%. And I think that this is the perfect proving fight to kind of to prove all the doubters wrong, or maybe to give us a kind of a clearer opinion going into his next fight of what type of fighter that Kennedy Nzechukwu is. There you go. I'll say it. Okay. Chase Sherman versus Waldo Cortes Acosta. What are we doing here? What the fuck are we doing here is all I have to say about that.
Immediately on.
Yeah, we're moving on here. I mean, I don't even know why we're looking at this guy in the middle of a main card. Look, they're trying to bring Waldo Cortes Acosta in undefeated heavyweight. They're going to try and get Chase Sherman and paste it again and try and build this undefeated guy up off his name. Let's see what happens. Let's move on. Muslim Salikov, Andre Fijalio. This is a fight I'm looking forward to. Two guys that are this is going to be a really interesting it's going to be an interesting striking battle, because I think, you know, the game that Salikov comes, he likes his spinning attacks, he likes his outside and rangy attacks, uses his kicks a lot, where Andrew Fialho likes to walk his opponents down, likes to close the distance a little bit and land. You know, we've likened him to the pressure boxer style that McGregor had shown sometimes, where he tries to get in your face. And that's what we've seen on these first couple of fights. Obviously, you know, Fialho, it didn't go to plan for him in his last fight. And, you know, I think, you know, it's a mixture of a couple of things for Fialho. I think, you know, he maybe had a little bit of overconfidence, and maybe he underestimated the type of fighter Jake Matthews is. I think Jake Matthews surprised everybody in that fight. But as I look at his record and see, he fought in January, he fought in April, he fought again in May, and he fought again in June. That's 4 fights in 5 months. And I mean, your body and your chin can only take so much. You're not just fighting in those times, but you're also training, and you're also taking shots, and you're sparring. And I think that Andre Fialho, you know, fair play to him, came in with a head of steam, picked up, lost to Pereira, Michel Pereira in his debut. Picked up 2 good wins against Baeza, looked great against Cameron Van Camp as well, short notice guy, but got found out a little bit against Jake Matthews, where we're like, okay, is it the fact that he was taking too much fights too soon? Is it the fact that he just wasn't good enough with Jake Matthews? I don't know, but I think we're going to find that out against Muslim Salikov, because he's given himself a good stint on the sidelines. I hope he's prepared himself well for this fight, because, you know, I think if he comes in and produces the goods, he has the ability to get Salikov out of there. But Salikov is no easy out. That being said, Spencer, just give me your thoughts on this fight overall, please.
I think it's exactly what you said. We're going to find out about Andre Fialho. Like, this is where we learn for sure. And it's probably unfair to say to learn for sure, because he's still in his first year in the UFC and there's always room to grow and things like that. But thus far, he's 2-2. He's lit up a short notice replacement guy in Cameron Van Camp, and a defensively devoid of, you know, skills and consciousness, Miguel Baeza, who just looks to go out there and throw and make poor choices and get hit. And then he's lost to the 2 best guys that he's faced. And so, yeah, that's really simplifying it. That's really stripping it down. But like, that's about where we're at. So is he good enough to beat Muslim Salikov, or is he just not quite that level? He's another one of those guys that feels to me like when he came out and he had a good showing, but lost to Pereira, understandably, we all said, hey, that's a good showing. Short notice. That guy's on a roll, big for the division, good performance. Goes out and beats Baeza. All right, pretty solid. Lights up Van Camp, but had some mistakes in there. Got hit a couple times too many for my liking. Suddenly people were like, this guy's, get this guy in the top 10. Now we've probably cooled a little bit. And I think everybody's started to realize that, like, let's hang on. This isn't Khamzat Chimaev 2.0. This isn't, you know, rush him into the stratosphere. And we'll find out kind of where the level fits for right now in this one. As you said, he's finally taken some time off. I think if he won that Jake Matthews fight, he'd have tried to fight in July.
I know.
Like, I think he'd have just kept playing it over, right? Like trying to just
going until the wheels come off.
Let's go until somebody beats me, which sure the UFC would have been in on. If it wasn't July, it'd have been August. Like he'd have taken aim at Kevin Holland's record for most fights in an 8-month period.
As Dana White says, he's my type of guy.
Yeah, but he got whacked.
Yeah,
and he got whacked by a guy that we haven't quite figured out yet either, in Jake Matthews, right? We don't really know how good Jake Matthews is. And so we find out here, Salikov has been in the lower third of the top 15 or just outside of it for a number of years. Good winning streak prior to his last fight, which was still a competitive fight. And so we find out what this guy's got on Saturday.
I mean, there's things that stand out to me when I watch fighters fight, and you know, I can't say, and I can't say I would have been too familiar with Salikov all that much before that last fight with Li Jiangyang, but I will never forget the speed that he can throw a fucking spinning attack. It's for a man of 38. Well, he was.
Harry can't believe that you weren't deeply familiar with the resources and wealth of experience of Muslim, the king of kung fu, Salikov.
The king of kung fu is the king of spinning stuff. Look, I seen him. I mean, there's so much fighters going on. I mean, I'm not saying that I definitely seen him fight before that, but it's funny that now I remember him off a loss based off other great wins that he had maybe before that. But that's just how I feel about it. I was just like saying, I remember watching him where it was like he lulls. Like his style is he lulls you into a slow, and then he gets you settled, and then boom, he'll explode with that spin attack. And I just fucking love that shit. But Harry, please wax lyrical about this fight for us, please. What do you see happening in it? Who do you fancy getting their hand raised at the end of the fight?
I think this is why this is really brilliant matchmaking and why I really like this fight a lot, is because you sort of played it out my points beautifully, both of you. Salikov is a slower pace fighter, good footwork, uses those spinning attacks and the threat of those spinning attacks to force guys back and force guys to engage on his terms. Fiallo is somebody that we've seen that wants to get inside, wants to land shots. You know, Fiallo is somebody me and Shawnee T podcasts have had controversial discussions with on this program about a number of times. Obviously, Shawnee said that he thought Fiallo was going to be a really big deal in this division, and maybe still can be, right? Absolutely. Very.
I would have been leaning towards that. Not necessarily a big deal, but I would have based off a couple of his performances, would be thinking that, you know, he might have been a regular in the top 10 in the division. But, you know, I think, yeah, like Spencer said, we had to cool the jets after that last performance. But now, you know, this one is a real proving ground for him, really, isn't it? To try and maybe, I think, okay, we can get overexcited. We can maybe belittle skill sometimes, but this is the great equalizer. I think this fight is where we really truly find out what Fiallo's about.
Right. I mean, possibly, you know, for us to have a man that's going to fight 5 times in 12 months and to still not really know who he is strange, right? Like it is strange, but he comes in against short notice against Michel Bahia, not much of a camp, looks great in the first round. And then obviously the conditioning doesn't follow through for the other 2 rounds. These things happen on short notice fights. Like nobody has any problem with that. He goes out against Baeza, eats far too many shots. And, you know, my opinion of Baeza was that he wasn't an amazing fighter to begin with. And, you know, fine, he goes and gets the win, no problem. Van Kamp, not a great fighter, not a UFC caliber fighter, goes out and absolutely whacks him. And then you're thrown in against the enigma that is Jake Matthews, who, depending on when he turns up, he looks like he should be a top 5 fighter. And then other days he looks like he shouldn't even be in the top 15 sometimes.
But it has to be said, he looked like a top 5 fighter, I feel, in that fight. I mean, I like that's a performance that really sticks out to me, where I think Jake Matthews surprised everybody, including himself, because he looked like a completely different fighter in comparison to what we had seen previously as well. And I think I think it's really that. I think it's that fact, with the fact that Fiallo was way too active for somebody coming into the UFC, where you kind of have to settle into. I think it's important to settle into the UFC a little bit, because it's a different level of competition that you're facing in there, and you have to give yourself every chance to perform at the highest level. And honestly, I don't think that Fiallo has done that so far inside the UFC. And I'm curious, like, there's nothing saying he goes out there and fucking knocks out Salikov and is looking to fight in UFC 282 there in a couple of weeks' time, because that could very well happen too. And then we're going to be like, oh, fuck, now we're back to the drawing board with this guy. But maybe he's only in it for the money. Maybe he doesn't get, but maybe he just wants to fight, earn money, and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but I think your point holds a lot of weight, and that's that the scrutiny of your ability in the UFC is far higher. Any mistakes, there are guys that will punish you, and will punish you devastatingly. Now, Salikov, 38, time's not on his side, fine, but his style isn't one that needs a ton of athleticism. I just think that this is a battle of range. And this is why it's interesting to me. This is why it's a great fight, is because Salikov could absolutely keep Fiallo at bay, turning side kicks, regular side kicks, keeps him away. Fialho can't close the distance and he's going to lose a decision. Or Fialho is going to find a way to cut angles enough that he'll be able to get to Salikov. And if he gets to Salikov, we know he's got big power. So I also think that this is a great matchup for both men. Salikov, this isn't an insanely tough matchup. This isn't a guy that's just going to run in there and blow him out of the water. And similar for Andre Fialho, this isn't a Jake Matthews-esque level of fight, but we will know if he goes out there, and even if it's a 2-round fight or even a decision, and he looks great in there, then we know the ceiling. Then we know that the ceiling is slightly higher than maybe we thought it was after the Jake Matthews loss. And I really love matchmaking like this. It's a great
100%. I agree. I think a win is not, I wouldn't be shouting from the rooftop thinking he's a top 10 guy or anything like that too. But I have one more question for you, Harry, about this fight, because I do think it's an excellent stylistic matchup. And I did mention it already, and you said it too, a battle of ranges, because we're going to be looking at a Salikov who's going to be wanting to keep it on the outside at kicking range, and we're going to see Fialho who's going to want to close the distance, be on the inside, and look to kind of get off his strikes in boxing range. What do both of these guys need to do to ensure they're fighting at the range that they need to be fighting at?
Win the outside foot battle is the honest answer. If one chooses southpaw and one chooses orthodox, the outside foot battle is the primary precursor as to who's going to be able to land shots and who's going to be able to control the distance. If they're both fighting orthodox or southpaw, whoever wins the inside foot battle is going to win. And to me, we're going to find out a lot about Fialho because of this. If you're somebody that throws a load of spinning kicks, you need to be able to hide them. And the way that Salikov hides them is twofold. One, by lulling you into this false sense of security and rhythm, as you've already spoken about. But two, he's good at planting his feet in places that you don't expect him to spin from. And he's good at forcing you to move your feet that then allow him to spin, and you're still moving your feet to square up with him. So I think for Fialho, a big focus in this camp, if we can call it a camp, and the time when he's in the cage is going to be about footwork. How can I create angles that make Salikov's angles suffer? And if he chooses to spin, he's either going to miss his shots and give me his back, and I can either then, run into him landing shots, take him down, do whatever. Or how can I force him to throw and then give me the inside space? Those are the questions that Fialho needs to ask of his footwork and Salikov's footwork. The second, I think, is feints and fakes, right? If Salikov can feint and fake enough that Fialho is nervous to enter the pocket or wary to enter the pocket, that's great stuff. If Fialho can force Salikov to be nervous enough to try and spin, that's fantastic as well.
100%.
Two main playing fields, and 100%. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Another thing I'd say that, like, even, if you have a guy who's looking to get off those spinning attacks as well, what you got to do as a fighter is when those spinning attacks do happen, whether they land, whether they don't land, you've got to respond with something. You've got to make the other guy think about throwing that shot again or throwing a certain technique again, especially if it's like a spinning attack like Salikov likes to use in particular. And I'm very interested to see. I am looking forward to that fight. I'm looking forward to seeing Fialho back in there, and I'm very looking forward to this next one as well. Jack Della Maddalena versus Danny Roberts. A really, really good fight here. Really interesting stylistic matchup. And, Jack Della Maddalena has been on a run lately, Spencer. He's been looking good. He's a guy that's got us excited time and time again on this preview show. 2 wins so far this year against Pete Rodriguez and Ramazan Imaev. And I think, 2 finishes in round 1 as well. And he'll be coming in with the height of confidence into this fight with Danny Roberts, who, on paper might seem like an easy matchup. But, Danny Roberts has been, looking good. And he was unfortunate, I guess, against Trinaldo the last time. Harry's that was the excellent fight IQ that Trinaldo showed in that fight to get the win. To get the win there. But I think, with no disrespect meant to Danny Roberts, I think this fight is about Jack Della Maddalena and what he's capable of and what he's going to do in this fight.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Like, I think this is Della goes out and smacks on Danny Roberts and picks up a 3rd first-round victory, puts himself on the podium for the Rookie of the Year race in the UFC, and has everybody looking forward to 2023 when he starts facing ranked opposition and moving forward in this division. I mean, you can all but throw out the win over Pete Rodriguez, short notice, 5th fight of his career, no business being in the UFC, got whacked. Like whacked early. He was busted up inside of a minute and Della just styled on him.
That fight, I remember, sorry for interrupting you, Spencer. That fight was a fight where Rodriguez was in there and he felt the force of Jack Della Maddalena, and you could see the expression on his face changed where he I felt so bad for him in there that time. You could see him like, oh shit, this guy is different. And that's what I kind of meant about, the difference between fighting outside the UFC and fighting inside the UFC as well.
Absolutely. I mean, this was a kid that had been running through people on the regional circuit, and like not even, this is going to sound terrible, not even the good regional circuit, not even like the shows that we all like pay attention to and we know the quality of them, the like hometown regional circuit where he's facing the guys that train a couple of days a week, but maybe they skip a session to go to the pub and all like that. And he was smacking those guys, and then he gets stuck in there with this Australian mad bastard. But the win over Amiv is a real win. It's a big quality win. And it wasn't just happened to find a shot. It was navigated some stupidness that he shouldn't have maybe gotten stuck in and be dealing with in the first place, but then attacked the body, and, attack the body, the head will die. And that's what happened to Ramazan Amiv, who isn't a guy that you get out of there easy, who isn't a guy that gets beat in the first round, except if you're really good. And Della's really good. Like he's one of these dudes that at 26, he doesn't look like he's 26. You probably don't think of him as 26, but he's got great footwork. He boxes really well, mixing things up in terms of working the body, working the head, throw some low kicks in there, can wrestle a little bit. Like he is a fairly complete fighter that's going to keep getting a little bit better each time we see him. And if he goes out and just runs through Danny Roberts, as I think we all expect him to, people are going to be talking about this boy next year.
Absolutely. I'm sure you feel the same, Harry. Are you excited? What do you like so much about Jack Della Maddalena? And I do believe he was a part of your Severe Spotlight at a previous time as well.
He was indeed. I think he was actually, I think I've done 2 on him. I think I've done Pete Rodriguez and Ramzan Amiv.
Nice.
Look, when you watch fighters, and maybe this is me doing the Plato, you need to be a philosopher thing, but when you watch fighters after having watched so many fights, you just get a gut feeling about a fighter. And the gut feeling I get about Jack Della Maddalena is that, one, he's going to need nose surgery when he hangs his gloves up. But second, he just gets the fighting stuff, right? Like, yes, he makes mistakes. Yes, there are positions that he shouldn't have been in. He shouldn't have been deep in a dast against Ramzan Amiv. He shouldn't have allowed himself to be in these positions. But when he is able to navigate his way out of some pretty tough decisions by fundamentally seeming to understand the fighting, he then goes to work. And when he goes to work, he looks fucking brilliant. The way that he moves his body and the way that he has command over what actions his body takes is really impressive for a man that isn't exactly storied in his career. This is going to be his 14th professional fight at 26 years of age. But he just looks like a man that knows who he is and what his base core foundational abilities are. And like Spencer says, this is somebody that we'll see bolts on, and we might see some takedown stuff. We might see some not getting dast every now and again stuff. All of this is bolting on, and we're only 3 fights into the UFC career after this fight's done. But Danny Roberts is a great test. And he's a great test because we saw against Oliver Enkamp, everyone was like, oh, he just needs to have the right styles matchup. And Danny's like, does he? Watch this. And also, you also see for Danny Roberts that sometimes he plays about and then Mike Perry happens. I was there live that night and the whole stadium went quiet because everyone just thought that Danny Roberts had been hit by a truck. And this random American fella that had walked in with his name on his fucking chest or whatever he's got, we had no idea what had happened.
It says God's gift.
He does have his name over the brow though, which probably is worse than the fucking chest, if we're being honest. But whatever.
But I think Danny Roberts is a similar fighter to ones that we, in a way, to Derek Lewis. And what I mean by that is consistency of performance. Sometimes Roberts goes in there and he can combine the wrestling with his longer range and the striking looks slick and everything goes well. And then there's moments where he's getting fucking clobbered all over the place by a fire hydrant against Francisco Trinaldo and just can't seem to find a way to get finished. So I think for this one, the question for me is which Danny Roberts turns up, and that will allow us to see what level of test Jack Della Maddalena gets on Saturday night. If Danny Roberts turns up the same as Francisco Trinaldo, this is a really, really simple night of work for Jack Della Maddalena. If Danny Roberts turns up anywhere near on form, we're going to have a really interesting fight, and we're going to answer a lot of questions about Jack Della Maddalena. And for that reason, I equally really love this matchmaking and really love this fight.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And especially on the last point you made, I think if Danny Roberts turns up on Saturday night, this is going to be an insane fight. It can't be any other way. Another interesting fight underneath that, guys, in the flyweight division, Zagleas Zimagulov is taking on Charles Johnson.
Fucking cheater, that guy is.
Zimagulov.
Yeah. Eye poke city, glove grab city, grab city. Fucking such a cheater.
Must have been training with Mike Chandler there ahead of his last few fights, perhaps. I do think, and my main point coming into this was I feel, Spencer, that he is a better fighter than his record shows over his last
100%.
5 fights. I think that he is 1-5 in his last 5 fights, but I think, he's fought against some good guys, and I definitely think he's a better fighter. Look, Charles Johnson came into the UFC, and we're talking about difficult matchups on your debut. He got one against Muhammad Mokaev. Coming in here as the former LFA flyweight champion, this is a really good fight, and it's a very important fight for Zimagulov, as it is for Charles Johnson as well, to kind of prove that he belongs in the UFC.
Yeah, it's a prove fight for both guys, right? As you said, Zimagulov is better than his record indicates. The losses are Halian Paiva, Amir Albazi, Manel Cape, and Jeff Molina by split decision that a lot of people thought should have went the other way, including at the time Jeff Molina, who was walking away like, shit, I lost. And then they raised his hand and he was like, I won? Great. Cool. I can go on my vacation happily instead of sad bastard going to Italy. Shouts to Jeff Molina. And so Charles Johnson, yeah, like you walk in, you face Muhammad Mokaev in London in your debut. Like that's not a fun assignment. That's just being sent out to lose. And so he held his own in terms of forcing Mokaev to work hard to get that decision. He didn't get finished. He went out and showed that he can stick around. But now is sticking around is one thing, but can you survive? Can you thrive? Can you have success? The best win on his record is Carlos Mota, who debuted a couple weeks ago in the UFC against Cody Durden and didn't have a lot to offer Cody Durden. And so now the pressure is on Charles Johnson to sort of show that, all right, that dude couldn't hang, but I can. Zimagulov is the perfect test for that. He's the guy that good fighters beat, and guys like Jerome Rivera that aren't good fighters, that can't hang in the UFC, get finished by relatively quickly. And so show us who you are, Charles Johnson. Similarly, Zimagulov, if you're going to win one of these and you really are truly better than that record indicates, here you go. This is the last shot. This is the one you got to go out and win, because I don't think you stick around longer than 1-5 in the UFC, unless you're Chase Sherman.
Yeah, and
then you get a main card assignment.
Yeah, he'll be put on as the main event next fight night card with a loss here, it. Who do you fancy to take this fight, Harry? Look, having had a look at these two guys before.
I think Charles Johnson probably takes this. I'm not sure I agree that Zalgas is as good as you guys may think he is. I think he knows how to run a pace. I think his gas tank's pretty good, but I don't really rate the actual skills. He doesn't wrestle enough, which is his strong suit. He just stands in the pocket and throws haymakers, and he's got a good chin. Whatever, dude. Cool. Great. You got a good chin. Like, I don't like, okay, I'm not saying he hasn't fought tough competition. He absolutely has. But in that tough competition, he hasn't looked great either. I think most guys under the barrage that Jeff Molina landed probably would have gone away. He would have been dropped and Jeff Molina would have done things. It just so happens that Jeff Molina's got a good chin as well. And when Zalgas was fighting back, you know, Molina was able to take those shots too. But we've seen, like in the Amir Albazi fight, he tries some pretty dirty tactics to stop Albazi doing what he's doing, ends up getting triangled. These things happened. Manel, okay, again, these things happen. You know, what are you going to do? But for me, Charles Johnson's got a lot to prove here, like you've said. And I think this is a good styles matchup for him. There's a guy that can do the wrestling, but probably not to the caliber of Muhammad Mokaev. Mokaev was coming in with, you know, every bit of confidence that the world could offer him in that fight. And I think going out and having the sort of defeat that you had to Muhammad Mokaev lights a fire under your ass, right? And you're like, okay, the next dude actually has to pay for what I was put through the first time. And if you're asking somebody for payment, Zalgas will take it all on the chin. So
literally, I love it. I love it. Look, I'm going to stick with you, Harry, for the next fight. Jennifer Maia against Marina Moroz. And, you know, on the point of people's people being better than their record might suggest, you know, Jennifer Maia is 3-2 in her last fights, lost to top competition. She has to kind of prove to herself that she's capable of picking up a win against someone like Marina Moroz, and, you know, maybe trying to make a run up that division as well. Do you think that she has the capabilities to do that? You know, I thought Moroz looked very well against Maria Agapova. I think she was solid in that fight. She's not being as active as you like. I mean, you look back at her record, the amount of fight pullouts that she's had to deal with over the last couple of years have been insane, which has only seen her fight 3 times since 2018, which I think is crazy. She'll be looking to kind of get back at it here and, you know, pick up the second win of her 2022 campaign so far. How do you see this fight going down?
So I think on the feet, Marina Moroz is a more fundamentally sound fighter. I think she throws a nice 1-2. She keeps her feet in the right place, does a bit of the head movement. Nothing crazy to write home about, but just, you know, a fundamentally sound fighter for when it comes to MMA. I think the big question is, does Jennifer Maia have the upper hand in the grappling, right? We saw against Agapova, both of these ladies had some beef and whatever, and Agapova came out looking to fight emotionally, and Marina Moroz was like, that's cool, enjoy this triangle. I think for Moroz, this is a great test. We're going to see what the ceiling is for her, because I think if she goes out and dominates Jennifer Maia, maybe gets a stoppage or just wins a good decision, then we have to ask some serious questions about Marina Moroz and where she goes from here. I think for Jennifer Maia, you hit the nail on the head that is she still championship caliber? Is she still top 3, top 5 caliber? I don't think we know. I'm not sure Jennifer Maia knows, right? It's been some fall from grace from all of the revelry that she got for taking a round off Valentina Shevchenko. And look, not many people take a round off Valentina Shevchenko. So going out there and doing what she did means that she deserves the plaudits she got. But the last 2 fights, she certainly hasn't looked like that type of fighter. And it feels to me as though she's a grappler that has a top game and no bottom game. And not no bottom game, you know, we're not talking about fucking Ben Askren's son here, but I feel as though she's certainly somebody that is more dominant on top and more comfortable on top than she is on bottom. And I'm just interested.
Do you think I'll apologize? I'm wondering if you guys can remember. If I have not had a chance due to time constraints, obviously being away, to look back at previous fights from Jennifer Maia, but I tend to remember that she did tend to want to stand and bang with Caitlin Chukagian and McMahon for more so than use her grappling. Would I be correct in saying that?
You would, yeah.
I remember those fights now, and I that was something that was baffling me, to be honest, watching those fights. And I think go back to what brought you to the dance. You know what I mean? I'm not saying go and grapple heavy all 3 rounds here, but like mix it up a little bit more. You know, she kind of reminded me in her last couple of fights of Damian Maia, like when Maia fell in love with his striking a little bit, like, you know. And then Maia was like, it takes one bad knockout for him to be reminded that, oh yeah, shit, I got to remember to take these guys down because I can do that quite well. And I think that's going to be the key for Jennifer Maia in this fight, at least anyway, for sure. It's like, showing that she is well-rounded. Don't stand and bang all too much. Don't use your grappling all too much. You can win the striking exchanges and win the grappling exchanges en route to a good overall win. And I think she has the ability to do that. I think she just has to kind of find that within herself, really, in this fight.
I just don't know whether we saw against Manon Fiorot and we saw against Caitlin Chookagian that she doesn't do a good job of being the nail. It feels as though when she's becoming the nail, or the hammer is lining up with the nail, that instead of making if it's a little bit like Dustin Poirier, right? Dustin Poirier goes out with a game plan and says, I'm going to do some really beautiful, really clean, really crisp boxing with some head movement. He gets hit and he's like, fuck that noise. Come here. We're going to do some fighting now. And it feels like Jennifer Maia is that, but without the skill, you know?
Yeah.
And
very good assessment.
Yeah.
Very, very, very good. Just stop there. That was a great assessment. That was brilliant. Spencer, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this fight.
Harry asked if Jennifer Maia, like, we need to find out if Jennifer Maia is still sort of top 3, top 5 caliber. I don't think she has to be top 3, top 5 caliber to beat Marina Moroz. Like, this feels a little bit to me like Dan Hooker, Claudio Puelles, where Marina Moroz is on a nice little run. Yep, she beat Agapova, who, you know, I'm certainly a fan of, and she's one of those people that I'll never give up on because I'm a lunatic. But she hasn't beaten anybody of this level since she surprised Joanne Calderwood in her debut and then ridiculously called out Joanna Jędrzejczyk, who was sitting cage side. And JJ was just like, yeah, cool little girl. Fine. Yeah, great. And then she went out and lost to Valerie Letourneau in her next fight, where they just punched the air for most of that fight. But this feels like Jennifer Maia is the underdog in this fight. That feels ridiculous to me, given that, as Harry said, it's 2 years ago we're fawning over her winning a round against Valentina Shevchenko. Like, we're going to fault her for losing to Caitlin Chookagian, who doesn't lose to anybody in this division other than champions and contenders, and Manon Fiorot, who is the other person that Jennifer Maia has lost to. So, like, maybe she's fallen off a cliff. Maybe this is just she's lost the plot and all she wants to do is stand and bang when she's not fully equipped to stand and bang and not play to her strengths. But, like, I need to see her lose to a Marina Moroz before I'm like, cool, underdog, counting her out. This feels like, listen, again, harbinger of things to come on the picks and plays later this week. Go get your money in on Jennifer Maia and thank me later.
Absolutely.
Or if it doesn't work out, just lose my number.
Hey, even if they lose your number, they know where to find you each and every week on the SevereMMA YouTube channel, Spencer. So you're not going to get away that easy, my man. Look at it. We're going to take a quick run through of the rest of the card, Spencer, if you don't mind. Please highlight some of the rest of the fights. That Jennifer Maia, of course, and Marina Moroz, along with Zamagulov versus Johnson, will prop up the prelim section of the card. We have some more fights taking place on the prelims. Spencer, take us through some of the highlights of those fights.
Yeah, I mean, interested to see what Miles Johns looks like in his first camp with Glory MMA. Vince Morales, we know sort of the level he is. Should be a competitive bantamweight fight. Not all that keen on Ricky Tercios and Kevin Natividad because Ricky Tercios is, you know, a weirdo. Vanessa Demopoulos and Maria Oliveira. I've been told that Vanessa Demopoulos is the team captain of Team Kite because I do not like her at all. I feel about her the way that Harry feels about Ramona Pasquale. I just don't understand. Like, her striking is just terrible, and yet she's won 2 straight fights in the UFC. So we'll see. I'm interested to see Brady Heastand. I thought he looked good on The Ultimate Fighter season 29, losing to Tercios in the finale by split decision. He's just one of those kids, and he's really a kid. He's 23 years old. That is just young and raw, but has some grit, has some sandpaper to him. And that's the kind of stuff you can't really teach. So can you teach some of the other stuff to get him to where you can use that toughness and you can use that tenacity that he's shown? I have mixed feelings about Sikjitsu as a gym to bring people along, because for every Michael Chiesa and Juliana Pena that have had success out of there, there is Sam Cecilia, and there's our Austin Arnett, and a whole load of other people that you've never heard of. And so we'll see. Rick Little doesn't believe in low kicks or checking them, which is a really weird thing. So we'll see. But it's a good matchup. Fernie Garcia is a guy that just likes to stand and box, and he got boxed up last time out. So we'll see if Brady can wrestle. And then, I mean, I'm really interested in the opener. Natalia Silva looked really good in her debut against Jasmine Jasdavicius, coming back, first fight in almost 3 years, 25 years old, 10-1 in her last 11 fights. The one loss is Marina Rodriguez. So there's the level of this woman. And look, wasn't fighting real great competition, right? Like, wasn't beating proven names. It was a whole bunch of weekend fighters. But she looked really good against Jasdavicius, who's a real fighter. And so we'll see what she does here on Saturday. I'm high on Teresa Bleda. She is my fighter to watch this week. You give me a 20-year-old undefeated fighter who also beat a UFC level fighter just last year on her way up in Lucia Pudilova, I'm in. It's a 5-year investment, and then we'll reassess. Like, this is one of those, the money goes in, we don't touch it for 5 years. I don't even think about it. I just get the updates sent to me every once in a while, telling me whether the price has gone up or down, and we'll reassess in 5 years when it comes to term. I think she has potential. She's 5'9" for this division. She's big and strong and athletic for being a 20-year-old. Fought, dominated everybody that's been in front of her thus far. If she goes out and beats Natalia Silva, there'll be a bunch of people being like, who's this chick whose nickname is Rhonda? For obvious reasons. She's a judoka. So let's just see. To me, that's the fight. And I said it, I think, on one question this week, was like, this should be on the main card. This is one of those ones that you highlight the young talent as opposed to the lumbering heavyweights.
100%. Fucking swap this shit out with Chase Sherman any day of the week for me. And I mean, there you go. That you have it. You have your excuse to tune in at the very start of this card. We've done, as we always do on the UFC preview show, in the words of Brock Lesnar, we've turned chicken shit into chicken salad for you guys. We've tried to make this fight card as exciting as we can, and we will always continue to do that. That wraps us up for another UFC preview show. We have a week off next week, I believe. Yeah, a week off, and then we're coming back for the monster final pay-per-view of the year, UFC 282, Glover Teixeira, Yuri Prochazka. Harry, you have something to say?
Just wanted to send condolences to Rumble Johnson's family. We lost Rumble Johnson this week, and just a really, really devastating and sad loss for a man of only 38 years old. So hearts and thoughts go out to Rumble Johnson and his family.
Absolutely. Yeah, very well said. Very, very sad news. Myself and Sean, I believe, have plans to do. We're going to do a career retro next week in his honor. Yeah, that's already in the works. We're hoping to try and have a little chat about him, just some good memories. It was very sad. We look at these fighters and we see them perform each week on the television, but these are human beings who have families and have real life shit going on behind the scenes. And it's just something like this can just really put everything into reality. So, yeah, condolences to the Johnson family and to everyone who knows him and who's friends with him. And yeah, just a very, very sad situation there. Yeah, as we wrap up the show, thank you everybody for listening. As always, we love and appreciate you all. Up in the top corner there, you can see the barcode for the SevereMMA Patreon account. Please sign up and listen to all the great content over there, the Q&A, Speaker's Corner, Chasing Pack, amongst a bunch of other stuff. Check out all of Spencer's work, a conversation with this week Blake Harrison, an excellent conversation with too. Just a real good conversation about Blake, his passion for the sport and what he does outside the sport or outside of mixed martial arts. I really enjoyed it. Definitely go and check that out. Check out the Severe Spotlight this week and every Monday from Harry. Spencer, what else have you got going on, man? It's so hard. You got so much content coming out. It's just easier for you to tell everybody what else you've got going on.
I've got a special episode of a conversation with coming out later this week. A second episode this week. Got the chance to talk to Dan the Hangman Hooker after his victory. We sat down for 45 minutes and just chopped it up. Good dude, great guest. So that'll drop Thursday or Friday. And then, yeah, it'll be the usual, the picks and plays on Friday. We'll do some recap work on the site itself for the event on Saturday. And then Harry Powell and I will be around on Tuesday dropping the takeaways.
Every Tuesday, check out the takeaways. Always great technical breakdown of all the fights. Also, I want to mention the Saturday setup. If you're looking for all the UFC content that we have and Spencer has, you're going to check out the Saturday setup. It's the perfect thing. If you're at a loose end on Saturday, you're looking to bide some time before the fights, head on over SevereMMA.com. The Saturday setup, everything is there. You've got hours of content, hours of excellent content over there. Head over and follow Harry Powell at BJJ_Harry Powell. Follow Spencer Kite at Spencer Kite. Follow myself at O'Neill MMA. We're going to have a new episode of not the Chase and Pack, excuse me. We do have a new episode of the Chase and Pack, which will be out today. It's probably out already by this video comes out. We have a new Owl Triangle coming up next week as well. So if you're missing the UFC preview show, go and check out all of that stuff as well. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We'll be back in this week time to talk UFC 282. I cannot wait. We look forward to that. We